with killer lines, think Star Trek all the time. Zeros for miles, we drop some wild, we talk together in impeccable style. Exploring our music. Exploring our music. Listen up, the doctor's in. Grab the penicillin, cause your beats are sick and your head will stick. It's exporting our music. Listen up, the doctor's in. Grab the penicillin, cause your beats are sick and your head will stick. It's exporting our music. Exporting our music. Exporting our music. She's so fine with killer rhymes, thinks the Star Trek all the time. Terrestrial miles, the jokes are wild, and don't forget her impeccable style. She's so fine with killer rhymes, thinks Star Trek all the time.
Kapla warriors, today is a good day for baked potatoes and Marie Callender's cornbread, which is what I got myself today. Had my baked potato, which was delicious, and I'm gonna have some cornbread later. So sorry about last time. I ended up napping for like 2 hours and then napping for the next couple of days after that. So hopefully I can go for a full hour today. That's my goal. Since it's been, you know, some more days. It'll be a good way for me to see how ready I am to go back to work. And for those of you who don't know, I had a concussion a week and a half ago. And so last stream I ended up, my brain just like shut down after like, what was it, 45 minutes? So those of you that were here, my brain stopped being able to form sentences pretty much. So I went to bed. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. But if it does, that'll be good information for me. So I was in the middle. I'm feeling better today. Still tired, but better. I've been able to do some more walking around and stuff, so hopefully I shall continue with that. And yeah, haven't had much headaches, so that's good. My headaches have definitely reduced. Today I will be talking about continuing season 5 of TNG. Yeah, Turtle, were you there? Yeah, I just like, that legit. I was like, okay, I'll try to get through the season. And then I was like, okay, that's not gonna happen. I'll try to get through this episode. And then I was like, shit, I cannot talk anymore. So I'm gonna go to continuing season 5. I was on episode, I don't know what number, Hero Worship though. And talking about that one, which I'll start at the beginning of that one because I didn't get through it. Season 5, Hero Worship. So the Enterprise responds to the distress call, and they go to this ship, and the only survivor is this little boy, and he's like, yeah, we were attacked, and he describes this whole attack that happened, and they're like, oh man. And then the little boy finds out that Data doesn't have any emotions because he's an android, and he's like, interesting. And then so he goes and decides he wants to be an android, so he starts pretending to be Data because he's trying to deal with the trauma of being the only survivor on his ship, including losing his parents. So then Counselor Troy's like, Data, I want you to help him be the best android ever, to help him process. And Data's like, okay. And then they do that, and then eventually they find out they figure out there's no way this ship was under an attack. There was something else. And so they talk to the little boy, and he's like, we were under attack, we were attacked, we were attacked. And they're like, it's okay. And then Data's like, androids do not lie. And then the little boy's like, it was my fault. And he's like, well, something was causing the ship, to be shaking, and I fell, and I put my hand on the, on one of the panels, and that's what caused the accident. And then they're like, I can't remember the little boy's name, but they're like, that's definitely not what caused the accident, because there's like, systems in place against that. So like, just putting your hand there wouldn't press a button without like, whatever they have in place besides a code. And, so then they figure out, I can't remember what the cause was, some kind of space wavies. Yes, I do, Charlemagne Warhammer. And then the boy ends up saving the day because he helps them figure out that the problem was, so they were counting like some kind of space anomaly, and then they kept responding with more power to the shields, more power. But then the power actually was the problem, and Data figures it out by talking to the little boy. The boy's like, that's what they kept saying, more power. So Data says, cut off the turn off the shields or cut off the power, and they're like, okay. And then they pass through the phenomenon and everything's fine. So they figure out that like continuing to increase the power is what caused the waves in space to continually increase, and that's what caused the ship. Sorry, drinking some water. So yeah, it's a pretty good episode. I love Data, so I like seeing the little boy pretend to be Data. There's this funny part where he's like showing Data how he can build with the blocks the thing he's trying to build. And he does such a shit job. I'm like, I hope they get this kid in remedial classes, because he did worse than like a 3-year-old on building that. And it's like he's like putting bigger pieces on top of little pieces. I'm like, what's wrong with you, kid? But anyway, I'm gonna put that, I would say probably B. I'm gonna say B tier. Data's my guy. Violations. I do not like this episode. This is one of the few that I skip. Each series has a few episodes that I skip. There's a few in TNG, a few in DS9, and then like 30% of Voyager gets skipped by me. So this one is where they have these ugly aliens on with their weird tattered clothing. That is just, you know, future fashion, I guess. Lots of holes in your jackets. And they're these like race of, they can like read your mind and like your memories and stuff. And all of a sudden, like, Counselor Troy has this problem where she like goes into a coma, and then like other members are going into other members of the crew go into a coma, and then they come out of the coma and they like have their mind read by the mind reader people, and they're like, they read their mind, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's a group, it's a mom, dad, and a son. They're like, the dad did it. So then they're like trying to figure it out. And this guy's super creepy and like sexually into Troy. And then in the end, they figure out it's actually the son who did it. And they basically like, they call it like mind rape basically. And he's a creep who, he like puts them into the coma by like creating terrifying memories to them, sort of. Like he goes into their memories and then adds himself into it. It makes it really scarier. It's weird and it's stupid. Yeah, this episode sucks. I do like seeing Counselor Troy fight back though. When he tries to do it to her again, she starts like trying to beat the shit out of him. I'm like, yeah, finally. This probably goes in F tier. Like, this episode is not worth watching. It has no redeeming qualities. I hate it. The Masterpiece Society. Okay, this guy in this episode, I'm pretty sure in the episode The Enemy, pretty sure he plays that Romulan there. And I'm pretty sure he's the guy from the episode of Seinfeld with like the gum. I can't think of his name. And like Elaine has the wet shirt and he thinks she's trying to hit on him. And that whole thing. Loy, I can't think what it is. Pretty sure this is the same actor. So this is one where there's a planet that's having like major seismic activity and it's gonna like destroy them, and then they contact and they're like, hello, Enterprise, we don't, they're this society that does not allow outsiders. Like at one point they were a colony who like created this, they live in like this bubble basically, and the episode's called The Masterpiece Society because they all are like genetically engineered for their lives. So like at birth, they're like genetically engineered to be the best of whatever future job has been identified for them. So like the best scientist, the best leader, the best guarder of their traditions, as this guy seems to be. The black guy in this that's like really against them coming, the guy who like guards the traditions, he's in so many episodes of Star Trek throughout all the series. He's in a bunch. Like in the episode in DS9 when Worf's on trial, I'm pretty sure that's him, the other Klingon that's fighting against Worf in that trial. Anyway, so they go there, and at first they're like, no, we don't want help stopping the seismic activity because we can't have any outsiders messing with our society. And so, yeah, basically Ravencloak. And so, but then they're like, well, we have to because otherwise we're all gonna die, and what good would that do? And they're like, okay, fine. So then they start interacting with them, and then Troy's like, hey, what if I have an inappropriate sexual relationship? I should do that. Riker does it all the time. Why can't I do it? So she does. And it's kind of funny because then later there's a scene on the turbo lift where she's like confessing to the captain that she did it. We can talk about spoilers, yeah. And it's funny because she's like super emotional and she's like ashamed. And I'm like, Riker does this all the time and I've never heard him express remorse. Like, hello? But anyway, so they go and they become more and more involved in the society, and then they solve the seismic problem. But then it's like too late, and they basically have had, they've infected the society with the people wanting to leave the colony. And they're like, people like the female scientist, who's also reused. She plays in DS9 that alien who's undercover and has sex with Odo. She's like, I don't want to stay here. I've designed to be the best scientist ever, but I'm stuck here and I don't get to have any of the modern technology of other places. And so basically they came to the colony to save them from destruction, but end up destroying their society. And it's sad. And then he's like, I am in love with you, Deanna Troi, and I always will be. So it's too late. Too late. Yeah, that's true. So this one's pretty good. Maybe A tier. High B, low A. Because it's a good one. I feel like it's a solid plot. There's no weird shit. Like, the relation... It's one of the episodes where Troy has a relationship and it's not freaking weird and creepy. Like, it's not her and Riva. It's not her and whatever that pervert's name is. Oh, wait, no, I mixed this guy up. He's not the Seinfeld guy. I got him mixed up. But he is the enemy guy from the Romulan. But anyway, yeah, so it's like a non-creepy relationship. So that's good. And it's sad. Because, like, yeah, they got saved, but their society ultimately was destroyed. Oh, well. Okay, Conundrum. I think this is the one I screwed up last time, and I mixed it up with, which one did I mix it up with? Whoever was here, you remember. So Conundrum is where all of a sudden, all the crew has lost their memories, and they're like, who am I? What am I doing here? I have some memories, but not all memories. And, it's kind of funny because they're trying to figure out, like, who's the captain? And Worf's like, well, I've got this sash thing. Is it a bandolier? And so, maybe I'm the captain. So he starts acting as the captain and stuff. And at the time, Data was down in 10 forward, so they think he's the bartender. And then there's this guy. I swear he has a Scottish name, like McDougal or something. I can't remember, though. And as the audience, we know right away that he ain't supposed to be there. Because he's the first officer, but we're like, who the fuck is that, as the audience? But they don't know because they lost their memory. And then the first officer, he's like really, like he wants to fight. So they figure out through looking through like the database that they're at war with can't remember who. But they're at war and like they counter a ship and they destroy that ship. And then they're like, this is weird. And then they start to question like whether they're really at a war. Because they're like, we seem to be at a major advantage to these people. Like none of this seems right. But the first officer's like, no, war. Super war. We gotta kill these people. And then Worf is always pro-war. So he's like, yeah, kill him. But then in the end, they eventually figure out it's all a sham. That guy was a plant because their species is at war with the other species. So then they wanted to use the might of the Federation to win their war. So they wiped their memory and created up the false war. And they almost succeeded. So that's a good one because it's definitely like, even though you know the first officer is a plant, you don't know like what's going on or like why. I guess you know that the war's fake, but still, it's a pretty good one. A tier. Power play. Oh, okay, not my favorite. I'm not a big fan of episodes where someone's been taken over by an entity or anything of those, of that, theme, you know? Especially because then in other episodes, they act like that's not a thing. And, like, someone will try to tell them, and they're like, nah, no way. And I'm like, this happens all the time. Why is this implausible to you? Oh, hello, Leon Septimanota. So power play is suddenly Counselor Troy... Oh, no. So they go down to the planet, and Counselor Troy gets... Wait, I'm trying to remember. Some of them go down to the planet, and something happens, and they come back. And Troy and Data and O'Brien have been taken over. Like, you see them get taken over by some kind of, like, entity or spirit or whatever. Riker wasn't because he was injured, is if I recall correctly. And so then they go back, and they're all, like, and Counselor Troy's, like, trying to tell Captain Picard, like, we gotta go to this area. And he's like, oh, okay. But then Data just takes over the controls and sends them to that area. And everything comes to a head, and they figure out that obviously something ain't right with Troy and O'Brien and Data. They wanted to go back to the planet or whatever. And so then Troy and Data and O'Brien, like, they take over the ship, and they've got, like, hostages and stuff. And they keep trying to defeat them, but they keep failing. And so then Picard's like, okay, I'll go with you. So you can transport down to the planet. They're claiming to be the spirits, like, the spirit of these people, Captain something, who crash landed on the planet, like, decades earlier. And they're claiming, oh, we're the spirit of these people. And Picard's like, I don't know, sounds like bullshit, but okay. And so then they're like, we just want to go back down to the planet, and we can rest, and then we're dead, and that'll be good. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever you say. And so they go to the transporter room, and it's Picard and Keiko O'Brien and someone else is a hostage. Worf? Is it Worf? Yeah, it's Worf. And what do? They ended up... Oh, so then what happens is, like, they beam up a bunch of more of, like, the ghost spirity things. It turns out that it's actually a penal colony, and they're trying to set all these criminals free. I don't remember what they do to stop them, though. Does anybody remember? Like, huh. I don't know. They do something where they're gonna, like, kill all the prisoners that they have in the beam. And then... So then they just give in. And they're like, okay, fine, Picard. Don't come this way again. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's not my favorite. It's not bad, but like I said, I'm not a fan of Entity episodes. So I'm gonna do it a C. I don't care for it. Yeah, it was something like that. Something where they were gonna use the beam to, like, kill them. Let's see, ethics. Ooh, this is a good one. This episode cracks me up. Which sounds really bad. Sorry, I sound like a terrible person now. So Worf gets hit by one of those, what do you call those big barrels? There's a word for it. This barrel falls, hit Worf, and shatters his spine, basically. And then, so Worf is like, it looks like Worf's never gonna be able to... Drum, thank you, Drum. Worf, I was thinking Drummel, and I was like, that's not right. Worf is not gonna be able to walk again, most likely. And Worf is like, I do not want to live like this. I'm a Klingon. I can no longer live life as a warrior. So, Riker, I want you to go ahead and help me die. And, Riker's like, what? And then he goes to Picard, and Picard's like, well, you could do it or you could not do it. And Riker's like, wow, thanks a lot. And, Riker is, sorry, I'm getting tired already again. So Dr. Crusher, there's this scientist who makes me laugh because I think she looks like, Hillary Clinton. So I don't remember her real name, but I just always think she's the Hillary Clinton doctor. She comes on and she's like, well, hey, I want to help you. I have this technology where I could just grow a spine and put a new spine into his body. And it's like, and Dr. Crusher's like, nah. She's like, oh, you've done this in a humanoid? And she's like, well, no, not yet. And Dr. Crusher's like, hell no, that's too experimental. But, you know, Worf is like, okay, well, either I kill myself or I get the new spine. And Picard's like, yeah, Dr. Crusher, like, the alternative is he's gonna find a way to kill himself. And she's like, well, then I'll just keep him locked at all times in the medical bay, and you know, he's like, you gonna keep her under guard, like him under guard? And she's like, yeah, if I have to. And he's like, that's insane. He's like, Beverly. So they decide to do it, and then they do it, And then there's the part, and then he dies. But then, wait, no. He doesn't die because Klingons have extra of many of their organs. So they also had a backup brain system. So he lives. And it's super sad because at first Dr. Crusher comes out and she tells Alexander that he dies. And I think the actor does a really good job because, you know, a lot of the time child actors aren't so great. Because it totally makes me cry. But then it turns out he didn't die. And then Dr. Crusher and Dr. Hillary Clinton have a discussion at the end where she's like, you still think I did the wrong thing? And she's like, what does she say to her? You took a risk or a bet and it paid off this time. And I don't know. I kind of disagree with her. Like, obviously, yeah, it was wildly experimental, but it was that or Worf was probably going to kill himself. So, yeah, this is a good one. Let's say this is high A. Whoops, I put it in B. Damn it. So that's a good one. Yes, that's right. That's part of the episode, Charlemagne, and she also does experimental triage, and that's why Dr. Crusher, that's why she kind of hates her, is like, they're triaging people, and she's like, oh, well, I think this will save him, this experimental treatment, and she's like, you use these people in your experiments? And she's like, well, had a good chance of saving him, and she's like, well, you could have done the standard treatment, and that would have saved him, and she's like, well, maybe not, though, so that's why Dr. Crusher's like, you're a dumb bitch, which I agree with her there. On Worf, ultimately, Worf was the ideal subject for her, but on the triage people, no, that was fucked up. For sure. And Dr. Crusher's like, I doubt that'll be of comfort to their families. Because she's like, well, the data I gathered from trying my experimental stuff on them is going to be super valuable. And she's like, I doubt that'll be much comfort to their families. Now the Outcast. This episode, I'm really curious how it was received at the time. I was too young to possibly remember. This must have been like 1993 or something. 80, let me think, 87, 8, 9, 99. Maybe only like 91, 92, actually. So I'm curious what people thought of it at the time, because it's so difficult to look at it now, like 30 years later. This is the episode where they encounter the species they're working... What are they trying to do? There's some kind of problem they're working on with this species. This is a species that is gender neutral. They have no gender in their society. This character is Soren, who's working closely with Commander Riker. And, so then she starts to get close to Riker, and she gets a little creepy. She's like, Commander, tell me about your sexual organs. And it's like, whoa, I don't think the fact that you were not female makes that okay to ask. But, so she's a little bit creepy. But basically the thing with her ends up being Soren, or surname, did I say that? She's very interested in gender because in her society, there's people that... I guess you wouldn't call them trans, but these people are gender neutral. But there's people in her society that do identify as male or female, and that's like taboo. They're supposed to identify as gender neutral only. But she identifies as female secretly, and she falls in love with Commander Riker. But then she gets found out. She gets outed somehow. I think because people just had been suspecting it. And it's super sad because then they do, Riker tries to save her to be like, no, she's not, she doesn't identify as female. I forced myself on her. And they're like, well, that is plausible, Riker. And then, but then she's like, no, I'm going to stand up for myself. I am female and there's lots of people like me and we're not sick. But then they take her, they don't care about her speech. They take her and they basically do conversion therapy. And then Worf and Riker try to save her. But it's too late, and she's like, no, I was sick, and I'm sorry that I brought you into my sickness, and so then they leave the planet. And it's sad. I'm gonna rank this. I don't know, I feel like this is S tier because, I don't know, this is why I wish I could know what it was like at the time, because it seems to me like it must have been a really big deal at the time that it aired, but I don't really know because I was a baby, so I'm not sure. Anybody around then? We got any boomers here? Any actual boomers? But I feel like it must have been a big deal. I don't know. But then again, it's not my favorite though, just because I feel like the way she is with Riker is kind of creepy, like asking about his sexual organs and stuff. It's a little much. I just feel like if the genders, well, I guess she doesn't have a gender, she does. If it was reversed, it would be really fucking creepy. Cause and effect. I hate this episode. I hate it. This one is where they keep living the same day over and over and over again. And then eventually they figure out that they're living the same day over and over and over again. Because they start being able to like predict things like which cards are going to come out in the deck. So then they're like, okay, so something's happening that's making us relive this timeline over and over. How? Oh, interesting. But I don't understand why they wouldn't like the ending though, because the ending, the point of it is that it's sad, right? Interesting. Anyway, so this one, they're like, okay, how are we going to stop reliving the same thing? So then they figure it out, and Data puts a memory in himself to help him remember how to do it. So the memory he puts in himself is the number 3, I think, right? And that's to remind him that they should follow Riker's advice, because Riker has the 3 pips, right? And then that bursts them out of the repeating timeline, and then there's another ship that was stuck in there with Captain Fraser. Just joking. It was Fraser from, Fraser. And they've been stuck in there for like 80 years or something, because they've been stuck in there since like TOS timeline. And Picard does his classic, like, there are some things I think you should need to be made aware. I do not like this episode. I hate it, actually. This is D tier for me. I hate this episode. I don't know. I don't like repeating timelines or dimensions. They stress me out. It's the OCD. Hello, Erasmus. So I do not like this episode. I'm sorry. It stresses me out. I do not like anything with timelines or all extra dimensions, alternate universes. No, none of them. They stress me out. Hello, Khan. First Duty. This is a Wesley episode. But as far as Wesley episodes go, it's pretty good. So they're on their way to the Academy on Earth because I think Picard was going to be the keynote speaker, or the commencement speaker, right? And hello, Storm Kenway. And then on the way, a not evil admiral calls and is like, oh, I forgot I have my sound on. I almost never have the sound on my phone, but my sister needed to call me earlier, so I put it on. Just turn it back off. She calls and she's like, you're close to the Crusher family, right? And there was an accident. Wesley's fine, but one of his flight team members got killed. A kid that was his friend. And this is a great episode because it's got, it's okay, Sleepy, you're welcome anytime. This has Nick Locarno, who is basically OG Tom Paris, but they didn't want to pay royalties to the Nick Locarno creator. So, same actor, basically same backstory, but it's Tom Paris. His name is not Nick Locarno. Anyway, they make fun of that on Lower Decks, I believe. So, yeah, they go to, and Wesley was on a flight team, and they were going to do a performance for the graduation. Nick Locarno was the leader of the team. Yeah. It is, yeah, see, Blacklight, I agree. Wesley episodes are not great, but this is the best Wesley episode. And, you find out that, they're lying about how the accident happened. The reason what caused the accident wasn't what the team said. It was actually that they were doing an illegal maneuver. They were doing a culvert starburst. That was what they're supposed to be doing, or it's the one they weren't supposed to be doing. Because their flight plan said they were going to be doing this one thing that they're allowed to do, but instead they did something else that was illegal and hadn't been performed in like decades, because the last time there was a death. And so, they have their whole trial, and Picard figures it out. Geordi and all them figure it out. And Picard's like, you need to tell the truth, you little shit. I raised you better than this. And Wesley's like, I choose not to answer, sir. And he's like, you choose not to answer. And he's like, first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth. Whether it be, what does he say? He lists different kinds of truths. And he's basically like, you tell the truth or I will. And they go and they have the last day of the trial, and the admiral's like, well, based on the evidence we have here, a different Voyager episode? Wait, are you talking about Nick Locarno and Tom Paris? Charlemagne? And so they're like, the admiral's like, look, as far as the evidence we've gathered here, we think that you're lying, but we have no proof. So all of you are just punished. What punishment did they give them? They gave them some kind of punishment, but, you know, it was practically a slap on the wrist considering what they actually did. I mean, it was a shitty, I think it was like holding them back a year or some shit like that. Or I think she just said it would go on their records. But then, and then they ding the bell, trial's over. Trial's over, they've gotten away with it. And that's when Wesley decides to stand up, and he's like, sir, we lied. I'm waiting until we've literally gotten away with this, and now I'm gonna tell you that we lied. So then, Nick Locarno... Yeah, he plays Nick Locarno, but Nick Locarno is Tom Paris, basically. They just, like I said, they didn't want to pay the royalties by making Nick Locarno appear on Voyager, so they created Tom Paris, whose backstory is the same, and it's the same actor, basically. Yes, and it has Sito, don't get me started. That's my favorite episode, is the other episode with Sito. So yeah, so then Wesley does that, and then Nick Locarno fights really hard for the team and is like, this is all my fault, this was all my fault, they were following me because I was the leader they looked up to, so don't punish them. So Nick Locarno gets expelled and his career destroyed, and then the rest of them are just held back a year. And Wesley's like, I feel awful. And it's like, yeah, you suck, bro. Are you kidding me? You waited until they had literally gotten away with it, and then you basically get away scot-free, and Nick Locarno's screwed. So yeah, that's basically the Tom Paris character backstory, is there was an accident, he lied about it, and so it's ever so slightly different, but it's basically the same. Because they're being cheap bastards. I'm put this A's tier. It's a good one. And it's got Budsby, the groundskeeper that was friends with Picard. Bolby? Anybody? Alright. The cost of... Wait, what is this? Oh god, is this what I think it is? It is. This is a terrible episode if I've got this right. Well, there's aspects of it I like. Let me double check that I've got the right episode. I'm typing in the cost of living because that's the name of the episode, and it's like the cost of living that comes up in Thailand, in Canada, in Texas. No, thank you. Not what I meant. Boothby, thank you, Michael. That was getting on my nerves. Yeah, okay, god, this is the episode where Lwaxana Troi comes on board and she's like, I'm getting married again. She's getting married to a man that she basically met on Tinder. Because she wants to get married again, and she's old and alone, but then this guy is like, she meets him and he's really not vibing with her and her whole culture and who she is, and Troy's like, don't do this. And but what I like about this episode is like Alexander and Worf are having problems as always because they have issues. And Troy's trying to help them. She's not doing a great job. Like, I don't even have a therapy degree, and I know enough to do a better job than her, but that's okay. And in the future, I guess therapists are just not as good. And then Lwaxana Troi bonds with Alexander, and she's like really sweet with him. So that's the part of the episode I like, is I like her relationship with Alexander because it's really sweet, because, you know, life is hard. She listens to him talk about his feelings, and it's really sweet. So I like that about this episode, because that poor kid needs something like that in his life. But oh my god, she takes him to the free spirit colony or whatever on the holodeck, and it's just the weirdest shit ever. Like, who wrote this? It's so weird. So that's just bizarre. And then in the end, she ends up not marrying the guy, and yeah, it's terrible. It's C tier, but I do like the Lwaxana and Alexander relationship, and she calls him Little Warrior, and it's really sweet. I like that about it. Poor kid needs some joy. Yeah, they do their mud baths where they all seem to be naked in there. That's not weird. Then the perfect mate. So this has the actress whose name I know but is not coming to my head. She is Jean Grey in the original, you know, the X-Men movies that were super good. Some of my favorite. X1 and X2 are two of like my top, maybe top 10 favorite movies. Top 20 for sure. I love those movies. X3 we don't talk about. But she played Jean Grey. So she's in this, and it's weird though because she plays Jean Grey, and then Picard, or you know, Patrick Stewart is Professor X, but they're like a romantic in this episode, so it's weird from that perspective. But yeah, so she's on here. She's in this glowy egg thing. They don't know she's in there. She's being transported. What's interesting is she's not a Trill, but she has the spots of a Trill. And so, yeah, it's totally her. And so she has the spots of a Trill, because the original Trill in the episode, The Host, you can see, I don't know if you can see, he's got the weird forehead ridges and stuff, and he's very different. So then they changed the design, because obviously they saw it was a lot sexier, I guess. So they did the spots instead. But she's not a Trill. So anyway, they have this diplomat guy, and he's transporting this glowy egg thing. The glowy egg gets opened by some Ferengis, and it turns out she's in there. And she has been raised her entire life to marry this guy to, like, unite these two peoples or whatever. Ulrich of Alt. And, so she's, like, empathic. And she's, like, a special... What's she called? She's called something. And she's a special type of person in her species that has the ability to, like... She's empathic, and then when she meets the person she's supposed to be with, she basically forms herself to be their ideal mate. That's why it's called the perfect mate. There you go. And then when she bonded with them over X amount of time, that's her personality forever. And so... Yeah, so... She's very, like, sexual and seductive, because that's part of her, thing. I can't think of the word. And so then the diplomat gets injured by the Ferengi, but they still have the special ceremony they need to go through, this wedding ceremony. So she teaches Picard how to do the wedding ceremony. But in doing so, she unintentionally bonds with Picard and like falls in love with him, essentially. So she... There's a different word they use for it. Does anyone remember, like, bonds? The bond... What is it called? But yeah, so basically her personality ends up forming itself around Picard. So she's really into Shakespeare and archaeology and all that. And it's super sad because then he's like, oh my God, you can't marry him now that you've bonded around me. And she's like, well, I have to because, you know, for my people, for the peace. And she's like, also because of bonding with you, I know about duty and blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, I only hope he likes Shakespeare. And she's like, I'll still be able to please him because I'm still an empath. So it's super sad because now she has to live the rest of her life pretending that she loves this guy and is a certain way, but she's not. I like this episode. I'm gonna give it low B tier. Hey, Otter. It's a bonus stream while I'm on break. But it's sad because, like, she's, yeah. Can't remember the actress's name. She's super beautiful. Like, she's so stunning in this episode. She wears this, like, silk dress that's, like, kind of translucent, and it's, like, so pretty. It's, like, silvery. Imaginary Friend. I hate this episode with the creepy little girl. No offense. This redhead little girl is in an episode of DS9 with the holographic people. But I think the other little girl is creepy as hell. So this is the one where Clara... she has an imaginary friend, and her father's worried about it, and Troy's like, it's normal, she's just, you know, had to move around so much because you're an asshole who makes their kid move around different ships and worlds. So she has no friends, so she has her imaginary friend. But then all of a sudden her imaginary friend is real. And they're like, what the fuck? And then this whole thing, and... then she's like, becomes evil because she's mad because the little girl's not spending all her time with her. because Counselor Troy is trying to help her make new real friends that exist. And everyone doesn't know that the little girl, the creepy little girl, exists. They think she's just imagination. And then so she decides that she's gonna kill them all. And then they decide not to, and they talk her down because they're like, oh, it's because you were seeing life through the eyes of a child, so it seemed really unfair to you, but we just had these rules for Clara to keep her safe. She's like, okay, we're cool then. It sucks. It's total shit. Borg. This episode's a big deal. I'm gonna end after this season because I am still pretty damn tired. But after I get through these ones, then we will then I will preview before I end, I'll preview Crown and Crew episode 2. Yeah, Otter, that would have been so funny if it was Q and Q's just fucking with them. That actually would be a great episode. Hey. So Borg. So they go respond to a distress call, I believe. And there's a crashed Borg ship, and there's an almost dead Borg. But then Dr. Crusher saves it and brings it back. And and then Picard's like, what the fuck, Dr. Crusher? You should have left it to die, because he's got a little PTSD around the Borg, obviously. So then, they start to, and they're like, okay, well, what we're gonna do then is we're gonna gather information about the Borg through this guy, and then we're gonna implant a virus, and then send him back to his cube, and the whole cube will be destroyed. Then they end up naming him Hugh, and he becomes buds with, Geordi, and he starts to rediscover his humanity, basically. And so then, once he discovered his humanity, Picard and everyone else is like, we can't just use him as a bomb and send him back to the Borg. And I'm like, yeah, you definitely can, though. Like, obviously that's sad for him, but, you also are potentially saving millions of lives. So, they end up being like, Borg, do you want to stay or do you want us to send you back? And he's like, well, I'd like to stay, but then you guys will be in danger, so you can send me back. And so they send him back. To be continued at the end of season 6. It's not technically a to be continued episode, but it does get continued. So this is an important one. I'm S tiering this one. Next, to the next phase. So, yeah, you don't name it exactly. Next phase. They're helping out some Romulans, right? And then Geordi and Ensign Ro seem to get killed in a transporter accident, but it turns out the transporter actually just made them, like, invisible, basically. But they think that they've died. Ro thinks she's died because she sees Dr. Crusher making up her death certificate and everything, and she's like, we've died, Geordi. And Geordi's like, hell no, we haven't. And she's like, yeah, we died. But then, they figure out that the Romulans are actually, doing secret stuff. And there's a Romulan who's invisible, and they're doing secret stuff. I don't know, I'm tired. And then, they figure out a way to, communicate with the Enterprise crew by sending out blasts of some kind of energy. And Data is throwing a funeral for Ro and Geordi. He decides to do like an Irish wake kind of thing where everybody's happy and celebrating. And then, but then they figure it out and they get found. And they're able to turn them back from invisible and stop the Romulans. Yay. I'll say, I like Ensign Ro. Oh, low A tier this one. That's my fussy baby girl. I think after the life Ro has, you can understand why she'd accept death so quickly. Oh yeah, that sounds right, Charlemagne. The Inner Light. Okay, so apparently I'm the only person that doesn't like this episode. But I don't like this episode. the inner light. So there's this probe, and it like takes over Captain Picard, and he's like on the ground, and it's like probing him. And they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And while he's in this probe, he lives this entire life on this other planet. And while he's on the other planet for a long time, he's like, "No, I have to get back to my ship." And they're like, "There is no ship. Your name is..." Wait, Galen, that's his friend. I forgot his name. And they're like, "No, this is where you live. This is your planet." So finally he accepts it. And he's got his bestie. He's got his wife. He has 2 kids. He becomes a grandfather. And the planet starts dying, and he's trying to save it. But there's no way. And so finally, as an old man with his children and his grandchildren, he goes, you know, they're going to send out a rocket. And then when they're sending out the rocket, he's like, "Oh my God, I've seen that shape before." And they're like, "Yes, we're sending this out to send our memories to someone, so we'll always be remembered." And he's like, "It's me, I'm the person." It's very emotional. So basically then he wakes up and he realizes, so he's lived like an entire lifetime, and he realizes that none of it was real. It was just put in his head because this society whose planet died and they all died, they wanted to be remembered. So they did it by causing lifelong trauma and grief to Captain Picard. And then they find so while he was on the planet, he learned to play the flute, the Resican flute. And that was like his big hobby. And so then he, in his, in the probe, they had the flute. So he gets the flute, and that's like his one memory. I have a replica of the flute. The real one was for sale a couple years ago. They were actually selling the real prop. Obviously, I couldn't afford that, but I do have the replica one that I got as a birthday gift from my best friend at the time. It's very special. It really plays, but I haven't learned how to play it yet. So I hate this episode, but I seem to be the only one in the world. Yeah, everybody loves this episode. It just, I don't know. It's like I told you, I don't like alternate timelines or anything. But to be objective, I will S tier it because I know I am the only person who hates it. I do like seeing Picard as a grandfather and a father, though. It's very sweet. Times Arrow. So they get called back to San Francisco. And they're... I know, you're right, Turtle. It's not an alt timeline. I don't know. It just bums me out. So... Times Arrow. Times Arrow. Oh, yeah, so they get called back to San Francisco, and Picard's like, "Why'd you call us here for this?" And he's like, "You gotta see." And it's Data's head. And they're like, "Oh my God, what is Data's head doing here in 18... What year are you guys? What year would this have been? What? 18... I don't know. 18 something. 19 something. Well, I'm trying to be objective, Joshua. I don't hate it as much as some of these other ones. Let's see. Right, so they go back in time, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, because there's like... And Data gets stuck back in time, and they're like, "Oh no, Data, he's gonna die." So Data's stuck back in time, and he's there with... Guinan's there because she's buddies with Mark Twain, and then the not busboy, the bellboy. Thank you, 1893. Thank you, Otter. The bellboy is it Jack White? Is that, I want to say Jack White, but I know that's not right. The author of like White Fang and shit. He's really famous. Like went to Alaska. He's a famous author. Jack. That's gonna really bug me. White Fang. What's the other book he wrote? I read them when I was a kid. Well, he's very famous. Anyway. And so Data's stuck there. He's trying to make a time machine to get back home. He goes and talks to Guinan. Jack London, thank you. God, that was really pissing me. I kept wanting to say Jack White because I'm thinking White Fang. I'm like, Jack White is very different from Jack London. Anyway. So then Troy and Picard and Riker and Dr. Crusher, so again, and Geordi, so all the most important people of the crew decide to go back in time to get Data back. and they figure out, like, everybody's dying of cholera, and they're like, this is weird, what's going on here? But it's actually these aliens that are doing the time travel stuff, and they're, like, feeding off of people's energy with their little snake staffy thing. And this is a two-parter. End of part 1, I think, is when Data gets stuck in the past. And then, they're trying to get them all home, and what ends up happening... Data... What happens? Data... I don't know, they end up getting Data... They save Data with his old head, and then they leave the new head, the current head, behind, and they... Picard gets stuck in the past with Guinan. Everybody else is back in the present, but Data has been killed. So then, Picard leaves a message in Data's old head, which they have in the future. So they put Data's old head on Data, and save him, and then Data gets the message, so they're able to save Picard. And there's this weird, like, sexualness between, Guinan and Picard that I find very unsettling. They always have a little vibe of that with them, and it's just weird. Jack White wrote White Fang, and Jack London formed the White Stripes. I'd like to hear what that sounds like. So, yeah, it's weird. She's like, why did you take care of me? He's like, we have our relationship goes beyond friendship, beyond family. And it's like, what the fuck? They always have this, like, implied, like, major history between Guinan and Picard, but they never follow it up with anything that matches, like, what they've implied. It's very weird. It's unfulfilled. So I don't love this one, but there are some funny parts. Also, one of the guys that Data plays poker against is Mark Alaimo, the actor who plays Gul Dukat, who hopefully you all know I love Gul Dukat. He's one of my top 5 favorite characters. So I'm gonna B-tier this one. It's not my favorite, but it's pretty funny. It's too high. I guess, but they say weird shit all the time. Because in the future, Guinan says the thing, or Picard's like, it goes beyond friends and family, like, oh yes, and it's always like, okay, you need to follow this up. Like, you need to stop saying it and show us. So, anyway. Think I'm probably gonna be done for today, y'all, to conserve my post-concussion energy, but I will probably do another stream later this week. Yeah, Dukat, Mark Alaimo is awesome. I hope he goes to a con sometime that I'm near so I can meet him. That would be fun. Somewhere on the West Coast, like if he did maybe Portland, Seattle, SDCC, maybe if he did WonderCon. Been to all those ones, so maybe he'll do that. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, just really tired. But the headaches are pretty much gone, so that's good. And I'm gonna have a follow-up on Friday to make sure I'm good to go back to work. And hopefully I can start my light therapy again, because I assume I'm not supposed to be doing light therapy right now. Go back to the gym, hopefully. And we all see. Yeah, I would love to meet him if he goes to a con. I'm always keeping an eye out on cons on the West Coast to see who's going. And sometime. I did meet, last time I went to a local con, I met Sean Marr and Summer Glau from Firefly. That was fun. They were super nice. If you're into Firefly and you get to meet them, I recommend it. They're awesome. So... yes. Oh, and now I will, before I sign off, I will give you a preview of Crown and Crew Episode 2.
On tonight's episode, so many maids! Plus, a look at the newest collab.
Majestically galloping upon her steed, she's the kingliest king the world's ever seen. Though her vocabulary is a bit confused, when it comes to entertainment, she just can't lose. Her Majesty is ready to go. Turn up the lights, let's start the show with special guests and the latest news. It's time for Round Table Talk with Crown and Crew. Crown and Crew.
my dearest citizens, and welcome to another episode of Roundtable Talk with Crown and Crew. 'Tis the season of love and overpriced chocolates. Tell me, my loyal crew, how was your Valentine's Day?
Terrible!
Oh, really? Why is that?
The commander was so busy helping that maid cafe, he didn't have time to take me out on a wonderful romantic date. Also, for some reason, his bed now smells like fish and rum.
That's odd. I wonder why that is. Perhaps Trony can help solve that mystery. Trony?
Trony says she's too embarrassed to appear in this episode. She doesn't want anyone to see her maid outfit.
Oh, well, that's quite understandable. It is? Yes, of course. After all, with such an ill-fitting and underwhelming costume, it's no surprise she'd want to hide in shame after this event.
Hey, who are you calling underwhelming? Trash? Disgusting?
What?
Wow.
OMG!
Sorry, I guess I got carried away playing that role for the maid event. Please don't double kidnap me. My king?
Oh, don't worry, Trony. I'm a merciful king and would never dream of disciplining such a useful citizen as you. And besides, nothing could be worse than being forced to wear such a disappointing costume.
Seriously, Trony, you're bringing down the image of the kingdom. Couldn't they have given you a Super Sentai Archranger-themed maid outfit at least?
Hey, look on the bright side.
What's that?
Trony's costume is so bad, it makes Sin's look good by comparison, despite it also being a huge disappointment.
We're burning airtime, people. Let's get this show moving.
Ah, yes, of course. Thank you for keeping us on track, our constantly dilated director.
It's diligent, my king.
Oh, right. I knew that. Yes, let's quickly check in on the Gotcha Fork.
All right, so that was around 2 minutes of the episode, which is about 14 minutes. I'm happy with how the masked script turned out, but you didn't get to see that yet. You'll have to tune in for that next Monday. And yeah, I think that is all. I might stream again. Today's Wednesday, right? So maybe tomorrow or Friday. Before I don't know about Sunday because I have a really busy day, and it might be my first day back to work on Monday, and it's gonna be really busy if it is. So we will see. Keep an eye out. So thanks for joining today for season 5 of TNG, which has got some of the best episodes, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.